I'm Gracie Galloway, Chair Emerita of the North Carolina AAPI. My hometown now is Concord, North Carolina, but I was born in Maui, and I'm a Teotihuacan Chinese. Some people call us Straits Chinese. So way back in the day, when AAPI was first formed, we were a party of one person. Gautam Desai was the chair, and there was actually no board, no membership, no nothing. This was way back in the day. And poor Gautam really had his work cut out for him. He was trying very hard to raise the awareness and the consciousness of the North Carolina Democratic Party as to what AAPI truly meant. And he was really hitting a headwind. So ultimately, after a couple of years, he just threw his hands up in the air and he said, they're not listening to me. I'm sorry, I can't do anything. And so AAPI essentially kind of not dissolved, but we lowered ourselves down to mere simmer rather than a full boil. It was at this time that Mike Honda called me. And when Mike Honda calls you, you know he wants something. He doesn't just call you. So Congressman Mike Honda called me and he said, all right, I need you to come to DC. Why? You just need to come to DC. Okay. So I go up to DC thinking I'm going to get some dim sum out of him, and that's not the case. What he said to me was, you need to revitalize AAPI in North Carolina. It's growing. I know that right now, at that point in time, we had a presence of, we didn't even hit 1%. It was like 0.000 something, right? We didn't even hit 1%. But he says, we're growing. And we are going to be the wave of the future, and you need to go in and figure out how to do this. So I said, okay, Mike, I'll do it, but I have two huge caveats. The first one is that you let me do what I do best without interference. You got to promise me on that. And the second is, if you don't like what I'm doing, if you think that I'm honestly completely off the chain, that you pick up the phone and you call me. And he agreed to both. So I said, okay, came back and, kind of thought, geez, now what? I talked to my husband, Joe, at the time, and he says, well, there's a Montagnard community here, which is the Degas community. There's a Hmong community here. There's a Vietnamese community here that we have strong ties to. And that is essentially how it all got started. Because between Joe's connections with the Vietnamese community and my connections with the Vietnamese community, because of our Vietnam veteran background, I was able to truly pick up the phone and call Amy Nguyen, who was at that time, she was the chair of the Vietnamese community in Charlotte. And we met for coffee. And she told me her whole story. And she also told me why she was a Republican. It's like, okay, Amy, no, come on. Are you really a Republican? She said, yes. And the reason why she was a Republican is because she felt that the Vietnamese had been betrayed by the Democrats. And she felt that that's why she was a Republican, because she felt her community, her country had been betrayed by the Democrats. But when I pointed out that her country was actually betrayed by Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger, that was like a big, what? And an aha moment for her. And that was, she didn't immediately change to become a Democrat, but she just, had this aha moment and she thought about it. And that is the same kind of reaction that I had across the board with pretty much all of the different ethnic backgrounds that I met with. So Amy was my very first person that I approached as far as forming and growing Asian American Pacific Islanders. The second batch of people that I approached were the South Asians, because there's a huge presence of South Asians in North Carolina. Many of them do not self-identify as South Asians, and so I'm sure that many of them were not even counted and included in that 0.00001, that small number. So Dimple Ajmera was running at that time, thinking about running for office, and And she came to an event, and serendipity, I met her, and we talked about, the South Asian presence, and we talked about how important it is that we have representation. And Dimple was right on board. Dimple says, absolutely. And she's running for office. She wanted to be the voice of Asian American Pacific Islander in the Charlotte, Mecklenburg region as far as representing what was important to us. And so that was, again, so wonderful that it just happened that way. And of course, we got Dimple elected, and she's still in office now. And Dimple never forgot. She really never forgot. She never forgot that, that people whom she did not know, never met before, actually stood up, and got in there to help her. I introduced her to Belle Young Hong, and that was also such a wonderful thing because Belle threw her support behind Dimple as well. So, AAPI then after that just essentially kind of grew organically. And I believe that a lot of it had to do with the fact that it was a tag team thing between my husband Joe and myself, because we both had connections in the Asian community. Joe had spent 16 years in Asia, and part of it in South Asia. He had covered the Bangladesh Pakistani war, and he was in Indonesia for a long time. So that was between his connections and my connections. It just grew organically, and it was so lucky that happened. So then I called Mike Honda and I said, hey, Mike, we're growing. And he said to me, I knew it would happen. See, Mike knew better than anybody else that really it wasn't just me alone. It was going to be a partnership. He just knew that it was going to be me and Joe working it. And he knew that Joe had worked, been 16 years in the Far East and made all these contacts. So it grew, and it was such a pleasure to watch AAPI grow. It was such a pleasure to essentially be able to sit down with people and talk to them, and not talk politics to them, but listen to their story and listen to why they came to America. Because, the AAPI community does not grow by birth. We grow by immigration. And so when people come here from their native country, and they tell a story about why they're here, sometimes they're political prisoners, sometimes they're political refugees, rather. Like the Burmese community, the Karen community, they're here, honestly, because of being the politics. They were afraid to really speak their mind. And so they're here now, they're citizens, but they're not voting. Okay, why are you not voting? Well, we don't want to get involved politically because, again, the memory of what's happening back there, of them being imprisoned or their family being imprisoned, all that is very, very much in the forefront. And I think that one of the great things about Asian American Pacific Islanders is that we get it. We understand. Yes, we get it when you say you don't want to be part of a political process. We understand why. Because we've either lived that experience, or we have family that lived the experience, or friends that have lived that experience. And so this is why we're stronger today, I feel, because we get it without you having to explain it. So I'm a Democrat. All right, why am I a Democrat? Because people ask me all the time. They really do. They think, I should be a Republican, I should be whatever. But here's why I'm a Democrat. In order to select or to have any kind of belief, I believe that you have to go into history. You've got to figure out the history. And the history of the Democratic Party is Harry Truman, Franklin Roosevelt, John F. Kennedy. These are the people that gave us Medicare, that gave us Social Security, that gave us Medicaid, even though it was George Senior Bush that signed Medicaid. It was the Democrats that pushed it. So this is the party that is for the people, that does things for the people. So we've got Medicare. Before we had Medicare, before that, we actually had senior citizens who were so ill and so sick and so hungry that they were dying from hunger. And I don't think people understand this, but that was part of our history. When Ronald Reagan decided that he was going to do his trickle-down theory, trickle-down economics, which is nothing but voodoo economics, I lived through that. And I lived through seeing my patients, elderly patients, buying cat food because it was cheaper and living off cat food. I mean, that's a travesty. You don't do that to your elders. It's Asian. You don't do that to your elders. So then the 40-hour work week, yes, that came from labor. That did come from labor, but it was the Democrats that were backing labor. And if you like your 40-hour work week right now, thank the Democrats. If you like the fact that you don't have to, that the children cannot be abused as child labor, thank the Democrats. If you like the fact that you have Medicaid that actually helps cover children and women that are most needy of among us, thank the Democrat. So that's why I'm a Democrat, because I see this party as the party of the people, not of the rich people. Definitely Gaza, definitely, without any question. I lived through the Vietnam War. I lived through the Tet Offensive, where I had so many children and people that I knew around me that were killed. I talk about this from a first-hand experience, and I think about what's happening to the children in Gaza. I've always said children should never, never, never be considered collateral damage. And it irritates me, burns me up when I hear people say, oh, that's collateral damage. Excuse me. Excuse me. That is so insensitive, that is tone deaf, and that cannot stand. It cannot stand. So for me, Gaza definitely is the number one. It stands out more than anything else. Yes, women's right to choose. Yes, all the other stuff. But if you don't handle Gaza, if you don't take that issue and handle it and hold on to it and fight for it, then nothing else matters. Really, nothing else matters. Because if you don't fight for peace in Palestine and in Gaza, if you don't help Ukraine, Ukraine also, if you don't help Ukraine, if you don't fight for that democracy to be the leader of the free world, for us as Americans, for America to be the leader of the free world, if we don't fight for these issues, then we are nothing but paper tigers. That's it. Those are the two issues, more than anything else. Well, we always try to do the best that we can, because we believe that in this life, whatever life we're in this life, we do everything we can to make sure that we enter nirvana. The other part of it is this funny story my grandmother told me. She said, you have to do good in this life, because if you come back in reincarnation, you do not want to come back as a cockroach. It's the gospel truth. So do good. In this, use your Asian culture to do the best you can for everyone else around you, because you don't want to come back as a cockroach. So, to talk to elected officials, I would tell them this. You need to listen. You need to listen to the Asian American Pacific Islander Caucus and to the people that are within that group. Because when we do speak about issues, they're generally issues that we've been thinking about it. It's not, we don't just speak for the sake of speaking. And the issues that are important to us will help build America. And so they're not only important to us as AA and HPI, but they're also important to America writ large. We are highly educated. Most of us have, advanced degrees. We're doctors, we're attorneys, we're PhDs, we're pharmacists, we are business owners. So we're really, truly, heavily vested in the American dream and the American experiment and in America's growth itself. So listen to us. That's what I would say.